Hello, dear students and esteemed learners. Welcome to my course on Sociology of Health. Now, we are going to begin our course for week 9. And the theme for this week is Health of Women and Reproductive Health. Now, health of women is a very big topic because we are talking about the health of half of the humanity. So, we may need one full course on this topic itself. But technically, that is not possible because we are trying to understand this particular topic within the overall curriculum of Sociology of Health. So, it would not be possible for us to talk about so many dimensions related to health of women and reproductive health. We will discuss some of the important aspects, selective aspects, and we have been trying to understand the issues related to health of the women in almost all the topics where we are talking about health of the population. Most of the lectures where I have provided some statistics, I have provided statistics at the level of the gender also, right? So don't think that we are talking about health of women in this week's course only. Actually, the entire course, in almost every lecture, we have referred to men as well as men. So, why do we need to talk about this topic now? Because there are few very specific things that we need to talk about. And in this week's course, we will try to cover some of those topics, although with some limited perspective only. So, this is lecture number 41, and the topic for today's lecture is Health of Women Emerging Concerns. So, we will try to understand some of the views and counter views, and then some information which is available at global level, and we'll try to situate the health of women in the overall emerging context or scenario. Again, on this very topic, we have lots of debate and argument, views and counter views. This will not be possible to talk about all those views and counter views because those are basically very academic arguments, and for that we need to talk about those jargons. We need to understand so many things. That is not feasible. And so I've tried to present the core arguments and not the background in which those arguments basically emerge, because that needs further details. So the purpose is to make the learner aware of the kind of views and counter views, or you can say the narratives and the discourses which are emerging around the topic of health of women. So with this basic understanding, we will try to understand the topic in today's lecture, and I have covered few important things in this lecture, like the context of women and men from the perspective of health. That means some kind of gender difference or the construction of that. Then health of women, some of the emerging concerns and dimensions. Then 10 top issues for women's health. That is very important because how do the experts see some of the important problems at global as well as national level, and then what kind of way forward we are going to have. And then in this week's lecture, basically we'll talk about reproductive health and maternal health and some of the other specific issues related to women only, right? But in today's lecture, we will have a broader overview, a broader understanding of the health of women and the emerging concerns. So with this understanding, we come to our first slide. Now, we have been studying and understanding that health is a state of wellness. It's necessary for biological, mental, psychological, social, cultural, spiritual, as well as economic and political well being. And then this is a basic human right for all. And when we are saying for all, that means, of course, for men, women, and now we are also recognizing the third gender. Of course, it's also the human right of each and every human being, irrespective of the gender or sex that he or she is belonging to. Then, health is an indicator and a necessary condition for all paradigms of development. We had full-fledged discussion on the different perspective and paradigms of development, and there we have understood that health is very necessary for development. Now, when we look at the things from these perspectives, then we get to know that actually why do we consider health so important? Because it enhances the capability and functioning of human beings. So, as a human being, I need to have certain capability and functioning, and you also. So, health enables that. And so, this is very important for all of us. And when I'm saying all of us, then of course that is applicable for men as well as women, irrespective of the kind of dynamics which is existing between these two genders or the sexes. This is a necessary requirement for all of us. Now, women are susceptible to many illness or disease and healthcare issues just like men. There are certain things which are specific, but keeping aside what is specific, the rest of the issues could be considered as similar, or if not same, then similar. If the elements are not gender sensitive, then common facilities and care cater to the needs of all. For example, if there is a hospital, then a hospital bed we are talking about, then maybe that hospital bed could be occupied by a male or a female if the problem that the female is witnessing is not related to the kind of gynecological issues. For example, if there is a problem in the eyes, or if there is a problem in any other organ of the body, in that situation, basically the male as well as the female will have the similar status. So, there can be ailments, disease, problem which are gender neutral, or there can be problems which are gender specific. For example, if you talk about cancer, then breast cancer and prostate cancer are two important types of cancer, and we know that these are two gender specific. The breast cancer is a problem of women and the prostate cancer is a problem of men. So, there are two different situations. Going beyond these gender neutral or gender specific elements and disease, there are several life situations and experiences which are witnessed by women only. These are the life experiences and the specific situations like the maternity experience or the pregnancy experience. These are specific to women, and because of these specific role and experiences, women become so special in society if we look at it from the perspective of health and healthcare. So, on the one side, women need a specific care and a special treatment, but on the other side, the society which are dominated by patriarchal values or which are considered as patriarchal society play just the opposite kind of role. Those patriarchal society basically experience certain kinds of discrimination. The women in those patriarchal societies experience certain kind of discrimination. And a patriarchal society, if that is having discrimination that they are actually having, then that discrimination is actually becoming part of all the institutions and all the practices. And then the healthcare practices will not remain unaffected, because that is the nature of basically the discrimination or inequalities that we are talking about. So, a society which is ridden by gender inequality will reflect the kind of gender inequality in almost all the existing institutions. And this is how the patriarchal societies actually come into existence. India is largely considered a patriarchal society. Now, some people may have objection in making use of the word largely also, and for them, India is a patriarchal society. So, I'm talking about both the things, both the views are there. Now, women are not often treated equally in several domains of social and cultural life, although the Constitution talks about equal rights. And yes, the Constitution of India also gives some special treatment to women in jobs or in educational institutions or in certain other situations because of the specific requirement that women do need. So, on the one side, the Constitution talks about equality and special treatment. On the other side, the society basically uh, is having patriarchal value system, and where some kind of inequality or discrimination is also accepted. The high prevalence of anemia among women, adolescent girls, and girl child is a big indicator of their health vulnerability. So, we have seen the statistics and we will see, which suggests that more than two-thirds of the women in different age group basically witness anemia, and women who are also in the pregnancy stage, they are also anemic. So, this prevalence of this massive anemia is also an indicator of the kind of discrimination that women are witnessing in the day-to-day life. Anemia is the root cause of causation of multiple health problems among adolescent girls and women. And we have been talking about these things when we were talking about the disease, and we will talk about these things in other contexts also. Now, the feminist critics often say that the subjugated status of women is also visible in the fact that women's health is not treated as an independent factor, and that it is clubbed with children's health, and often it is termed as women and child health. So, very often the policies and programs and departments refer to women and child health, and that is one point of objection from the feminist critics. They say that women have their own agency, they are independent. Why do we need to talk about the children also whenever we are talking about women? Then, motherhood is often seen as an extension of womanhood. So, that makes the women child dad a very central concern, right? So, it's although this womanhood and motherhood are connected, but it should not look like this always, not necessarily. That is one of the arguments. Policies often look at women's health issue as reproductive and maternity issues and focus more on ANC, that is the antenatal care, and the postnatal care. So, medicalization of women is also seen from that perspective because of the medicalization of reproduction. And the Millennium Development Goals and the national policies do talk about basically the maternal and reproductive aspect of health of women. So, because of the kind of concerns which are existing, some of the claims made by the critique of the critics, the feminist critics basically, is also considered as valid. However, we should not forget that if you're talking about maternal mortality, if the state is talking about maternal mortality, then it's saving the lives, the precious lives of women. That is a very important thing because those lives could be saved. So we can understand that there are two sides of the situation. On the one side, the lives of women are getting protected because those are very important, very precious. And on the other side, there is a claim that a women is seen only for the reproductive role that they have to play, and minus that, their independence is actually compromised. British sociologist Anne Ackley, in her book The Captured Womb, have accused a medicalized culture of ignoring the desires and experiences of women themselves. Women are also treated as the target of patriarchal medical control in the views of Turner, right? So I've mentioned the reference of Turner also here. Then there are similar criticism related to the medical model of childbirth. Oakley and Rothman made a significant contribution to an evolving feminist viewpoint that women are disempowered through medicalized childbirth. So, when we are having a medicalized childbirth, then actually the agency of women is getting somehow compromised, and that is actually a kind of disempowerment. The broad task of feminism has been to question this illusion by showing that gender is socially constructed. So, what do they want to say? They are saying, the feminist critic are saying, sometimes we can make use of the word they, and sometimes we can make use of the word we, but that will not make the factual thing. The thing is this, that the feminist critic, they are basically saying that the gender is a social construction, and just like that, health and healthcare are also social construction, and very often medicalization of that is also a social construction. And because of the prevalence of patriarchy, all these things basically go the wrong side if you look at it from the perspective of the women, and that needs to be corrected. The feminist theories of health, illness, and healthcare therefore have the identical objective in common: the effort to show that women's health experience is constructed socially rather than centered explicitly on biology or body materiality. Then there are two important developments, basically the International Conference on Population and Development, which is known as ICPD Conference 1994, held in Cairo, Egypt. This supported a new approach. And this new approach talks about empowering women and providing them with more choices through expanded access to education and health services and promoting skill development and employment. That means this ICPD conference, basically, which was a conference on population and development, it says that empowering women is very important. Empowering women basically will provide them with more choices, and those choices should include good number of things like health services, skill development, employment, because through all these things the empowerment narrative will come into existence. Then another important international conference, basically the Beijing Declaration, that was basically related to the Fourth World Conference on Women, and it was held in 1995, that stated that the explicit recognition and reaffirmation of the right of all women to control all aspects of their health, in particular their own fertility, is basic to their empowerment. So when we are talking about empowerment of women, because of course the skill development or employment or choices or education or participation, all these things are going to empower women. But the Beijing Declaration is basically giving this empowerment a perspective, right? So what kind of perspective it is giving? It says that the explicit recognition and reaffirmation of the right of all women to control, right of all women to control all aspects of their health. That means this power to control their body or their health should remain vested in the women and not on the men, as patriarchy is often creating a situation. And then the next thing is this, particularly their own fertility and all decisions related to fertility or sexuality or reproductive rights. Basically, that should remain vested in the women and not in men, as it is happening very often in the patriarchal society. So that basically will create the kind of empowerment that women are basically aspiring for. So these are two international conferences, basically the Cairo conference and the Beijing conference, that articulated the arguments of the women, or you can say the feminist critics also, and they suggested a path, a discourse where the needs related to health as well as population could be could find a way forward. And as of now, basically these two declarations are playing very important role in giving direction. So when we are talking about health of the women, we need to take into consideration these very relevant issues and perspectives. Now, we need to talk about basically what are some of the emerging issues or challenges, or you can say problems related to health of women. Because without talking about this, the lecture will remain incomplete. We need to talk about. Now, there are good number of problems. Everywhere you can find some problem. So we cannot talk about all these problems, and I tried to basically find out some specific approach on this, and then I found that Dr. Flavia Bustrio, who is Assistant Director General for Family, Women and Children's Health through the Life course at World Health Organization, has identified top 10 issues for women's health. So I have added this, Dr. Flavia Busterio's 10 top issues for women's health, and the link of that is already given here. So it is basically available in the website of WHO, and that is there in the open access. So you can go and study on your own, but I have tried to talk about all those 10 issues which were raised by Dr. Flavia. Now, the first important problem identified here is cancer. Two of the most common cancers affecting women are breast and cervical cancers. Detecting both these cancers early is key to keep women alive and healthy. So this is a big problem because these problems are prevailing globally. Almost every country is affected by this, and as we know, cancer is very problematic, challenging, and an early screening and early detection basically can pave the path for getting cured from that. So breast cancer and cervical cancer require huge screening so that this could be detected at an early stage. The vast majority of these deaths occur in low and middle income countries, basically the cancer related death, where screening, prevention and treatment are almost non-existent, and where vaccination against human papilloma virus needs to take hold. So this is one of the serious existing problem, irrespective of the kind of opinion or perspective or viewpoint you are having. This is a problem which is the women are actually witnessing. The second problem is basically related to reproductive health. No matter how do you look at the problems related to reproductive health, but that is actually a very important, very critical stage in the life of a woman. And so the problems related to that needs to be addressed. So sexual and reproductive health problems are responsible for 1/3 of health issues for women between the ages of 15 and 44 years. So 15 to 44 is basically the reproductive span. Generally, it may vary from culture to culture, society to society, but that is the basically generally identified reproductive span. Then the unsafe sex is a major risk factor, particularly among women and girls in developing countries. And then this unsafe sex is actually making women vulnerable to good number of communicable basically infections, the STDs, STIs, including HIV/AIDS. And this is why it is so important to get services to the 222 million women who are not getting the contraception services they need. So reproductive health is important, and from that point of view, basically safe sex is also important. So this is considered as a second top problem. Then comes the maternal health, because when women have this maternity experience, then the entire health related aspect are basically identified as maternal health. I have included maternal health and reproductive health as a fresh topic, so we'll talk about these things there at length. But as of now, we can simply talk about the core argument. So many women are now benefiting from massive improvement in care during pregnancy and childbirth introduced in the last century. So basically, increasing amount of ANC, that is the antenatal care, and the postnatal care is basically making a difference. But those benefits do not extend to everywhere, and in 2013, almost 300,000 women died from complications in pregnancy and childbirth. And this is something that we also identify as maternal mortality ratio. So there is a huge prevalence of maternal mortality. Those are the preventable deaths. This could be prevented, right? So appropriate steps are basically required so that these deaths should be prevented from occurrence. And then the next important problem is basically the problem of HIV. So 3 decades into AIDS epidemic, it is young women who bear the brunt of new HIV infections. Too many young women still struggle to protect themselves against sexual transmission of HIV and to get the treatment they require. So there are 2 aspects basically. One is how to prevent the transmission, and the second aspect, if basically got affected by that, then how can they find treatment? So both the things basically create serious challenges. We talked about the first aspect, but the second aspect, basically the treatment aspect, is very important. This also leaves the women more vulnerable to tuberculosis. Now, HIV is basically the human immunovirus, basically immunodeficiency virus, right? So when the immune system is basically becoming deficient, then the person is becoming vulnerable to several other complications or ailments, and tuberculosis is one of those. Very often we find that we see that the people who are diagnosed with HIV/AIDS often die because of the immediate impact created by tuberculosis, right? So HIV is not a problem in isolation. It is a problem which is inviting several other problems also. And so the vulnerability related to that is immense, and that needs to be addressed. Then, of course, the sexually transmitted infections. So HIV is only one of the STI, but there are several other, like gonorrhea or syphilis. So untreated syphilis is responsible for more than 200,000 stillbirth and early fetal death every year, and for the death of over 90,000 newborns. So this syphilis is basically responsible for not only neonatal mortality, infant mortality, or basically stillbirth, but that is also a serious challenge for the health of the women, because that causes mortality of the mother also. Maternal mortality is also caused because of that, and so these STIs also need to be addressed. Then violence against women. We talked about the patriarchal values prevailing almost globally, and along with that there is another problem, which is actually violence against women. Women can be subject to a range of different forms of violence, but physical and sexual violence either by partner or someone else is particularly invidious. Today, 1 in 3 women under 50 has experienced physical and or sexual violence by a partner or a non-partner. So this violence basically needs to be stopped, prevented, and appropriate legal as well as social interventions are required so that it should be stopped. And at the same time, when women get affected by that, then they should be handled appropriately, and a very sensitive kind of handling is required. And from that point of view, a gender sensitive approach should be there. So this is what the system or the society can take care of. And then mental health is again a very serious problem. Evidence suggests that women are more prone than men to experience anxiety, depression, and somatic complaints, physical symptoms, and some of the problems which cannot be explained medically. So again, I'm saying that I have taken this viewpoint from one of the experts at the level of the World Health Organization, so that we can get a concrete understanding. It's not about having views or counter views. It's about trying to understand the problems as objectively as technically possible. And then, of course, the burden of the non-communicable disease is always there. And when we talk about basically controlling the non-communicable disease, then we are not talking about whether those are prevailing among men or women. We are talking about that. And just like that, the communicable disease and non-communicable disease both should be prevented, right? And then the unique experiences that women are having. So basically, being young, adolescent girls face number of sexual and reproductive health challenges, basically STI, HIV, pregnancy, and then there is basically very important issue related to giving birth at a premature stage, because about 13 million adolescent girls under 20 give birth every year. Complications from those pregnancies and childbirth are a leading cause of death for those young mothers. So, get basically motherhood at an early stage when the body and the person is not mature enough is basically creating severe kind of complication. And then many suffer the consequences of unsafe abortion, that is again prevailing at a massive level, and the societies are basically experiencing these things. And then we come to the last problem, which is basically related to getting older, basically the elderly, because the women at a later stage, elderly stage, if not having some kind of financial support system or social support system or some kind of network of the support systems, then they become more vulnerable. They are basically at risk of abuse and, of course, poor health also, because then a kind of exclusion is coming into existence, and that is aggravating all the existing problems. So women do need some kind of support at the old age, and that is equally important than what kind of support women are basically in need of during their reproductive span. But often the policies are ignoring this very important component, this very important aspect of our social life. So this is how we have tried to understand some of the important health related issues or concerns which are very meaningful for women. These are, of course, specific to women. And then before we conclude this, we can say that what kind of way forward basically we are looking at. And so I can summarize 2 or 3 things: that women have the additional responsibility of reproduction, and so they need additional care. Unfortunately, in patriarchal societies, that is not becoming possible, or that is not happening. Basically, not becoming possible is basically an excuse. That is not happening. That is the reality, because it's all related to a kind of social construction. And then empowerment of women is considered as the way out, right? So if the women are getting empowered, then they can handle all these situations and all these problems on their own, and that is considered basically the way forward. And when we talk about empowerment, then it is basically widespread, it is multidimensional. Of course, it is related to economic empowerment, it is related to social empowerment, it is related to political empowerment, and it is also related with the health empowerment. So an empowered women can take care of the health as well as other needs of herself as well as others. So when we talk about women's health, we need to have this understanding that empowerment is a very important discourse or narrative in the trajectory of women's health. So with this, I conclude this lecture, and here is think about this problem and activity question. You can have a look on these, and then we will meet in the next class. So till then, take care.